I don't know. We're just not brought in on decisions that's made. They're not bothered whether we're there or not. That's the way I feel. Nobody's ever came to me and said, would you like to be part of the church? How long is it since you've been there? I've never been asked, so they're not bothered, I'm not bothered.
My spiritual cloak was not woven with me in mind. At best, it was an anxiety-calming mechanism, and it did not fit. It was woven by others who did not have my measure, only a dehydrated impression. It was approved by authority. It has been enough for all those of your sex. Why do you need a special cloak? Because I am special. You said I was. Now you say, not really, only in theory. Triumphantly you said, there must be something wrong with you. No. Not this time. There is something right with me. No longer an oddity, I am now shaping my own spiritual cloak, and it is beginning to fit. I am fashioning my own cloak. And how is it, he said? Oh, it is swirling, broad, wide and deep, many colours and a little grey, passionate and sensuous, disciplined and frivolous, tight and light and black and white. And it is fitting me better since I started to measure myself. And my weaver's touch has urged me to become my own designer after 2,000 years of wearing other people's shrouds. Patriarchy is reflected in the churches in that it is another institution that uses power as power over, and that women are not visible within the church in any consultation, in negotiation about their own fullness of humanity.
By the time we get into the 21st century, that the church will be revolutionised, and it'll be on the basis of women that it'll be revolutionised.
But I think the real revolution begins at home. And I think for most women, if they begin to question things that are happening at home and their own image, that is very frightening. Even in our own group, we sometimes fall asunder and say, oh God, I can't take this, I can't act this, I don't want to know about this. And it's like the scales fall from your eyes. It would be just lovely to turn your back on it and say, it's all fine, really. But it isn't all fine, really.
But I think there is a body of women within the church, and I think it is growing. Women who are becoming sensitised towards feminist issues. I think at the root of feminism is the whole thing of liberation. And I think that women are going to be asking themselves whether or not they can, within the present church structures, achieve fulfilment, religious fulfilment, remain within the church, or whether they're going to have to move out. I think that's the dilemma that the church is going to have to face, the institution of the church is going to have to face within the next 20 years.
I believe that unless we develop a spirituality or enable the people to develop their own spirituality, we will not be able to achieve some of the objectives that needs to be achieved in the area. I'm very conscious that at times when there's maybe good positive movement, faction fighting and all the rest can take over. And I feel that, in Latin America, when the people were able to name their God as the saviour, and they were able to work out of that spirituality, they were able to come together and work for a common good within the whole local community.
Sister Joanne O'Connor works with local women at a family centre in Teresa's Gardens in Dublin. Recently, the women there completed a course on women and spirituality. However, many of them felt it was something that didn't really touch their lives. They're more interested in coping with the daily grind of feeding their families. They say the church doesn't listen to women.
All the decisions are made by men. Even if you see their committees, there might be a woman, but she'll probably be there to make the tea.
The women don't really have a role in the church. But as far as community is concerned, I find there is a role there for women to take if they want.
I think whole thing of spirituality is related very much to middle and upper classes, I think looking for spirituality in our environment and the conditions we live in is very much, you're in touch with God yourself personally, and you're not part of the structured church or anything like that there. And we I don't think we'd sit down and read the Bible and look for meanings in the Bible. I don't think we've time to do that.
There's very few women in the Bible that have a name. It was either this woman was coming from somewhere, or this woman from this or there or there. No name except for Mary Magdalene. She was a prostitute.
I feel that I deserve something from the church, and I don't get anything from it. It's a long time since I went to church anyway, but I do have a whole set of values of my own, and the spirituality did help me a little bit in that I found what God is for me is people and the goodness of people, and it's not the institution, you know, that we're led to believe is the church.
Well, the Pope was orphaned, as you probably know, and he comes from Poland, and in the Toot, which is a country that in a sense has lost its Catholic heritage, in some sense is an orphaned country. And the combination, I think, is very interesting, that he has a psychological need to return to the image of the ideal mother. And he's now, and has consistently actually throughout his papacy, advocated this kind of return to the unbesmirched mother. When he talks about the moral degradation of progress, he's, of course, again, doing exactly what I tried to describe earlier, which is that he's seeing woman only in terms of her sexual behavior, and he's simply defining the female roles in terms of some sort of sexual liberation he imagines is going on in the world because of some changes in some rebellion, perhaps, against Catholic strictures on contraception and divorce and so forth. But actually, he's not admitting a whole other range of possibilities of women in public life, women even active in private life in a different way.
He describes the two great tasks of women as bringing full dignity to marriage and motherhood, which you've just covered, but also assuring the moral dimensions of culture. Why does he make this demand only on women?
Well, he's absolutely pervaded, and though I think this is not actually representative of the church as a whole, I think that quite a lot of people within the church are quite keen to get away from this, but he is completely committed to the double standard. And I think that that very much betrays it, because he's there, women as the moral guardians of society. He sees them as the figureheads of, not only there's an identification of Mary, the Virgin Mary, the church, and womankind all together as these kind of moral guardians, but he's denying that, in a way, that men's moral conduct is as important. It is the mothers who have to be the guardians of family virtue, not the husbands, not the fathers. And there is a sense in which female virtue is something that has never known sin, that has never become acquainted with human weakness. It must be guarded in a state of innocence from the very start. Whereas male virtue is something that's to do with knowledge. It's an experiential thing. A man is allowed to go through moral choice, allowed to go through moral lapse, and come back and acquire virtue through knowledge. This is something that's denied to women. And one of the ways that I think it can be shown to be linked to Mary's cult is that Mary is increasingly seen as a very young woman. The idealized statues and images of her don't show her as a mature, experienced woman who has been through moral choice, who has come up against evil and decided against it. She's increasingly seen as this kind of nymphette, often in signs of her innocence, like sort of bare feet and things, to show that she hardly even, enters society enough to wear shoes. So she has this kind of total innocence, total imperviousness to experience, because that's the only way that a woman can be seen to be virtuous.
Vatican II stressed the need to create an active rather than a passive church. Many say that this isn't happening in Ireland. There are moves towards more lay participation in some parishes, but in others there's resistance to giving the laity a voice. Of course, there's also confusion about what participation really means. There's even uncertainty about who the laity are.
Are lay people those who are baptised into the church? Are they lay people, all of them, every single one of them? Are they people who, after they've been baptised into the church have reached adulthood and have taken on a certain commitment in their adulthood as parents, as single people, a certain commitment to their church, to their parish? There's other lay people who couldn't care less about the church and yet are baptised. Are they still considered to be part of the laity?
My understanding is that the laity is the church. It's a hierarchical church with our pastors there to serve the laity. But the laity, in fact, are the Church of God. That's my understanding of it.
In any given parish, there's three types of Christians. I would say in my case it's three types of Catholics. There's the lapsed Catholics. Now there's no judgment in this, lapsed Catholics. There's the Catholics who are what I call duty Catholics. They do their duty. It's kind of, you know, I do the minimum. And then there's the ones I would look upon as the people who really want to see God's kingdom come on earth. They have fire in their belly.
Not only are there differences in defining the laity, but there's differences about what lay participation means. For many lay people, flower arranging, looking after the old and providing refreshments is not enough. For others, that's what lay involvement is all about.
At every level, there are parish committees, and you will always have a group of people who will provide, if there's an event in the parish, they will be there, they will step in and they will provide care for the aged. And if there's an ordination, for example, which we had in our own parish not so long ago, and they're there to provide refreshments. And it's a living church. I mean, I really do not understand what all the demand is about the laity wanting a greater role.
I think there's a real danger with the old church where the priest is up there and the people are kind of, as I said in the article, paying, praying and obeying and, you know, just in their place. There's a real danger there that eventually they'll almost feel, you know, they're being used.
People tend to be very passive as Catholics and sacramental oriented. And here you are in a situation where we should be talking about our own difficulties and struggles in being Christian, in creating this kingdom and queendom of God. We should be telling each other our stories. We should be listening to the stories of the early churches. We should be celebrating the Eucharist and its implications together, and we're just sitting there.
In Ireland, there are hundreds of lay people studying theology, and worldwide there are more theologically trained laity than there are priests. But many laity are frustrated with the outlet for them after they finish their courses.
There is frustration when lay people then feel that they have attended those courses, that they look for openings within the local church. And this very much depends on the openness of the clergy to lay participation. And it's not easy for either the clergy or the laity. And I think it's the how of one builds the bridge between both in creating maybe a community of the communities within the parish. And this is one of the tasks of the Commission, is to be a bridge builder between the laity and the clergy and religious, and work together towards maybe having more participative laity within the country.
As a lay person, I would feel frustrated because it's so complex. Nobody is to blame. Lay people, for instance, who can speak on behalf of lay people? Who? Because who are you speaking on behalf of? You know, so that's the problem, one of the big problems. And bishops and priests will claim to speak on behalf of lay people. Yeah, maybe that in some way they're right. But I would claim to speak on behalf of some lay people as well, a particular group of lay people. And not on behalf of them, but with them. And I would feel with a certain amount of authority as a Christian, as a baptised Christian who's trying to achieve something about the kingdom of God here in Ireland, in Dublin, in Tallaght where I live.